For most dealers, your dealership is the culmination of your life's work. How do you want your dealership to be remembered in history? We're going to talk about preserving your dealership's history in this episode of Down Payment.
Welcome to Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers. Prepare to learn something new about the industry that keeps us moving.
Check out all our podcast content on our social media channels. We are at Down Payment Podcast on YouTube, Down Payment Podcast on Instagram, and Down Payment Pod on X. Welcome back to this episode of Down Payment. And on this episode, we're taking a little bit of a sentimental turn, but our history as dealers and in the car business is something that we really don't ever talk about. We're an industry that doesn't preserve our history very well. But it's so important. For most dealers, your dealership is the culmination of your life's work. So much blood, sweat, and tears, and your time away from your family, time in the trenches in the car business. It really becomes the culmination of your life's work. It's important to have a little bit of a historical notion about the value of your business, because at some point your business will be gone. Hopefully a long time from now and after being passed down for a few generations. But regardless, your history has value to you, something that you can look back fondly upon. And in this episode, I wanted to talk about preserving your dealership's history. Now, my first recommendation is every year you should be getting a group photo of all your staff, all of your employees. If you have multiple locations, you can do it by location, but get a group photo with all of your employees on an annual basis, something that'll help jar your memory, remember employees, stories, stuff that happened. That group photo can be really valuable. It's also a good camaraderie type of thing. It's something that you can share on social media. Get a group photo. The second one is preserve your ads. There's a compliance reason why we need to be preserving our ads anyways, but as the years go by and the way you advertise and what you advertise changes, preserving your ads has actually a lot of historical sentimentality attached to it. I have old ads from the early 80s from my parents' dealership. It's something that, for those of you tuning in onto the YouTube or Instagram versions of the podcast, you'll get to see on the screen some of our old ads, but preserve your ads. A lot of historical value to the advertising. And over the course of our dealership, we saw a tremendous shift where we were advertising in newspapers. And now I don't know any dealer that successfully advertises in newsprint. There were a lot of things that came and went in advertising for us. And so there's a lot of historical stories and a lot of effort went into those advertisements. Preserve them. The next one, preserve your testimonials, especially video testimonials are awesome, but written testimonials, video testimonials. Your testimonials are going to remind you of customers and great relationships that you developed in the industry over time. And even though we preserve them nominally for marketing reasons, have a way of archiving them and keeping them long-term. Then with your preserved ads and testimonials and group photos and photos of events and the stuff you did over the course of a year, produce a year in review video and put it out at the end of the year on your social media channels. There's a lot of value to drawing people in and showing people what you went through over the course of a year. That type of end of year sentimentality is really great marketing anyways. And it's something that over the course of years and years and years, you can look back on and remind yourself about stuff you were doing and working on in your business. And then finally, the most important way of preserving the history of your business, you should be journaling. There's a lot of good reasons to journal, but by journaling, I'm not talking about maintaining a diary. It's not necessarily an emotional transcript of what happened with your business, but rather just putting down the basics, how many cars you sold, where you're buying cars, employees that came and employees that left, and big events that transpired. If you can have the discipline of journaling on a daily basis, First of all, it's going to be a valuable record that when you do have questions about when events transpired for legal or documentation purposes, you have that. But then years and decades later, it's going to give a valuable insight into your business. We actually have this with my great-grandfather was a car dealer on the western slope of Colorado, and he journaled daily about his ranching and his car dealership. And it gives us an insight into the car dealership that is history that's not preserved anywhere else. And we understand certain things about how the car business operated back then that, frankly, most people don't have. Journaling is such a valuable insight and something to pass down to your kids and grandkids about your business. Highly recommend it. At any rate, you want to preserve your business's history. It is your life's work and it's worth it. Now go sell some cars. This has been another episode of Down Payment. Check out our podcast on all our social media channels. We are at Down Payment Podcast on YouTube, Down Payment Podcast on Instagram, and Down Payment Pod on X.
Thank you for listening. Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers, is a production of Meta Financial Services Incorporated.